hopefully. Let's see. Ba-da-bum. Is this the right okay. Let's see what guest comes on here. Mr. Daniel Morris. So, shout out to Tifa. We have one person in the house so far. Where's my guest? Let's see. So let me start. It's already 7 o'clock, and if people show up, hey Tifa, thanks for joining us. So let me just get right into it. I'm waiting for my guest to show up so that we can start the live at 7. It's 7:01. My name is Antonio Morales. I am the founder of the Liberated Self Therapeutic Services, and one of the initiatives that I created is called Freedom Fighters of the Minds. And Freedom Fighters of the Minds is an initiative that is mostly dedicated to Black and brown therapists and mental health professionals, other mental health professionals. And the intention is to support us with sort of maneuvering through and dealing with white supremacy in the mental health field. And so our initiative is we meet once a month, and part of the lives is part of the initiative so that we can sort of have more of a public conversation around how white supremacy impacts the mental health field. And the goal of bringing this to awareness, to having this conversation, is to make sure that we want to make sure that we bring awareness to it, right? Because a lot of us have experiences with the mental health field, whether as clients or mental health professionals, and we don't often talk about the impact that white supremacy has, not only on our work as mental health professionals, but also on the clients, who happen to be people of color or Black and brown folk. And so it's important to have these conversations just to like say that it's okay to talk about this stuff and not be like weird about it. We don't have to hide it. it's really real, like it's happening. We've had several mental health organizations, prominent organizations, that have written statements of apology for their complicity with racism or white supremacy. And so that's the initial reason for these conversations, just so you can hear it from us. And so each month we'll have 2 guests that will share about their experiences of white supremacy in the mental health field. Now, I see that my guest is here, Mr. Daniel. So our guest today is going to be Daniel Morris. He is a licensed independent clinical social worker. And I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to let him do that. But I met Mr. Daniel through Freedom Fighters of the Minds, one of our first meetings. And I really appreciated the way he contributed to the conversation. And he's always been sort of supportive in other ways with the Freedom Fighters of the Minds, sort of trying to lend his voice and, you know, encourage this sort of movement to move forward. And so shout out to Mr. Daniel Morris. You're a guest today. And I just want to let you know I appreciate how you've contributed to the Freedom Fighters of the Minds. And so basically that's how Daniel got here to be a guest on the live, is basically his contribution and wanting to lend his voice, which I think is super important. Before I begin, before I let Daniel in, because Daniel, I see that you're waiting for me. Guests are taking a little long today to come on, but that's fine. I just wanted to share the mission of my private practice, the Liberated Self Therapeutic Services. I love reading it because I think it sounds fly, so I'm going to read it. To disrupt and dismantle the psychological chaos and confusion of white supremacy, facilitating a transformative process that will allow Black and brown folk to heal from and transcend the adverse impact of white supremacy in all areas of their lives. So that's the intention of the mission, is to really sort of, this is the purpose of my private practice, is to really deal with the adverse impact of white supremacy. I mean, I think when you're thinking about mental health, you can't deny that there's an impact just because it's not sort of plastered everywhere. We have to understand that as human beings, we have to deal with the legacy of white supremacy in America, because this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. And so without further ado, I'm going to allow you, Mr. Daniel, to show up. Let me, it says here, Mr. Daniel, you showing up? Where you at? There you go.
I'm over here.
What's up, my brother?
I'm doing good. Okay, is my lighting bright enough? I don't know.
Yeah, your lighting is bright enough. Your lighting is fine.
Okay.
Can you hear me clear? Because I know the last time, like, something was off with my phone, and there was like something with the audio, and then it was like skipping. And I heard. This is what streets are talking. They're saying that Instagram is like, you know, getting in the way of these conversations by like glitching us.
Oh, okay. I can hear loud and clear.
Okay, so Daniel, before you introduce yourself, how are you doing today? How's your day going?
Man, it's been a busy day. Great.
Yeah.
I just came off the clock, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean. Okay, so it's been a busy day. Any like feeling attached to that? Just or like tired or?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, I was actually looking forward to this evening, so my energy level is kind of up. I'm kind of hyped, right? Yeah, but more importantly, like, because what I do is very fulfilling to me. I love what I do. I love helping people find meaning in their lives.
Yeah, I hear you. Yes. Absolutely. Okay. You froze for 2 seconds. Do you hear me? Did I freeze?
No, I got a phone call coming in. I need to disable that.
Daniel, tell your people, come on now, we're doing it live.
Yeah, I know. I should have come on the computer, but that's all good. It's all
okay.
Good. Yeah.
It's all, of course it's all good. So before you introduce yourself formally, I always ask every guest to basically, as a way of sort of celebrating where you come from, celebrating your people, celebrating you, I always ask our guests to talk about their people, their ancestors, right? So where do your people come from? And if you can name one positive characteristic or attribute from your
Okay.
people that you sort of inherited, and let us know how you sort of, how that comes forward today in your life.
Okay, where my people from? Well, I'll start by saying I was born in Jos, Nigeria. So Jos is a cosmopolitan city in the heart of central Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up in Jos, I was exposed to a whole lot of different ethnicities. Jos was like a little melting pot for all ethnicities all across the world. So we had European missionaries, American missionaries, we had Asians, Chinese, Lebanese. I mean, it was all over there. So went to school with all these nationalities. So it was a very beautiful experience growing up. So that was where I was born. By parentage, my mom is from Nigeria, which is the southern part of Lagos State. And my dad's family migrated from Guyana to Nigeria. And that's it. So, and I'm like 3 or 4 generations removed from the slave trade, because my dad's family migrated shortly after the abolition of slavery. So they decided to retrace their route back to the West African coast. And
Right.
ended up settling in Lagos. And that's how my dad met my mom, and the rest is all story. So what attributes did I get from my ancestry? Wow, that was very interesting. I was just thinking about it the other day. I would say it's a spirit of adventure, you know? So I've always had that knack, that wanting to know that, like, there's something more behind the veil. I just feel like everything is a veil. There's always a little bit more to know.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? So if you scratch a little bit beneath the surface, it will reveal a whole lot.
Right, right.
So I've had that curious mind, that adventurous spirit, and then that never die attitude towards things that I'm passionate about. Yeah.
So you're always sort of living your world or your life like in a curious mindset, like always looking to learn and see something new or different to expand sort of your horizon.
Yeah, because I believe that no one can put a limit or place a ceiling over you. It's all about, you have the power to create and recreate yourself.
Right, right.
You know, and you shouldn't allow anybody to put a limit and tell you what you can become or what you can become.
That's right. That's right.
And in your journey, you're going to come across closed doors. So you just find a way to, how can you keep pushing past? Because there's always more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I do know what you mean. So can you let us know, like, what's your current position and what do you do right now?
Okay, right now I'm a mental health therapist, and I run my own practice called Resilient Reliant Care. Yeah, and I've been doing that for quite a while now. I mean, initially I was on and off. I used to be a child protection social worker.
Okay.
I left that. I dabbled a little bit into private practice here and there. But until about a year ago, I decided to go into it full time, because I felt working in an establishment does not really give me the freedom to actually do what I want to do. And I felt like if I came out of it and I pursued what I believe was going to be my own contribution and impact, I'll be more effective at doing that.
Right, right.
I've been running my practice, and I work with at-risk young people. I'm also developing a nonprofit, like an intervention program for at-risk young people who interact with the child protective system and the juvenile justice system.
Okay.
And children who have experienced trauma, who without such interventions would have poor outcomes in later life.
Right, right.
So just trying to be the bridge for them so they can cross over these difficult times. So like strengthening their resilience and creating opportunities for them to become better and greater people.
Nice. I love it.
Members of the community. Yeah.
You know, I want to hear more about the name of your private practice, because I love the way it sounds. Can you say that again and tell me what's behind the name?
Oh, it's Resilient Reliant Care. So, because I always believed in resilience, like life is going to knock you down. I think it kind of stems from my experience. Like many times you've been knocked down. Yeah. It's a decision, it's a choice you make if you want to stay down, if you want to get back up. And I've always had that personality of wanting to get back up and push. And even if I'm broken, I still try to get up and push.
Yeah.
You know? So, and being in the mental health field, you know, a lot of people, they struggle a lot.
Yeah.
Like with understanding who they are, where they are, looking for meaning and purpose in life, you know? And if you've had one or two bad experiences, it's easy for you to just withdraw and say it's not worth it. But you just got to find that resilience in you. So that's where that came about. And then reliance pretty much comes from just being there and showing up every day. You know, just having that indefatigable spirit, just that tenacity, that resilience, just keep going. So I feel like if my clients can rely on me and I can help them build that resilience to keep going, then they can become resilient and reliant. So
yeah, no, that's dope. I love that. That's an awesome name. And like it just hit when you said it, right? Yeah. So I just wanted to like get into it real quick. So, and what inspired you to become a mental health professional? Tell me about that. Like, what was the thing that sort of moved you to get into this work?
Okay, so initially I was more into societal stuff. So my background is in sociology. So I was really intrigued about how society functions, what makes society what it was. So I studied sociology. I had an undergraduate degree in sociology and also a graduate degree in sociology and social research, right? And I got into community development, nonprofit work and all that. And then we'll go into communities, we'll do interventions and all that on a broad scale. And then you extrapolate the data and then you do your report findings and you say, hey, we went into this community and this was what we did, and this were the success stories. But when you interface with the individuals in those communities, you find like those interventions are not even far reaching. Like it's not really transformed anything in their lives. And I think when you focus more on the individual can impact the community more. Than you just look at the community as one monolith.
Right.
So that pretty much, I was like, so what do I want to do? A psychiatrist, a psychologist, or social work? And I saw social work was the quickest and the easiest path.
That's what they say.
Yeah, no, but honestly, it really is not, because
I know it's not.
Started, man, you just it's the journey itself, you know. So at the time, that was my thinking. I'm like, I'll just go and do a 2-year graduate program, become a social worker, and continue doing what I'm doing. But really and truly, it had to do my social work more was in line with sociology in a way. And that's why I went into it, because I was more socially oriented more than anything else. So
and that's the unique thing about social work, is that it's not, when you think about like a psychologist, a psychiatrist, like they don't look at systems in the same way that we're able to, right? So we have to look at the person and the environment. You have to consider all factors of someone's life holistically versus looking just at the mind, because it's not just the mind, right? It's like a whole slew of things that sort of combine to create our experiences.
Yeah, that's right.
So I get what you're saying. So it makes sense, because you was into sociology already, so it just goes right into that world.
Yeah, that's right.
So as you know, we're talking about white supremacy today, and so I would like you to tell me, right, based on your own words, there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
How would you define white supremacy? I want to hear this.
Well, I mean, we must have had that conversation at some time.
We have had that conversation.
And my position is this, right? And it might be controversial. Some people might agree with it and some people might not. But I don't think white supremacy is a thing. White supremacy is not a thing. Right? Because if you tell me that the white people are superior to other races, in what sense? Because at the end of the day, we all have the same origins. We all woke up one day and discovered that we are alive. Right? We're all gonna wake up one day and discover that we're dead. Right. Like the white man bleeds like we bleed. Yeah. He dies like we die. He cries like we cry. So when you break it down to the basic humanistic element, they are just like we are. So they're not supreme. There's no supremacy about a white man.
Well, we know that. Well, we know that.
But if you tell me about white dominance, yes, I'll agree with you. There's white dominance. We live in a white dominated world all across the universe,
Yes.
from Africa to Asia.
Everywhere.
And we're living in white value systems, right? And as a result of the history of the interaction of these other ethnicities with white people, the dominance of colonialism and slavery and all this kind of stuff, the language that we speak, whether it's English or French or Portuguese or Spanish or whatever. So we live in a white dominated world.
Right.
I agree about white dominance, but white supremacy is not a thing.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, but when you talk about white supremacy, from a different point of view, intellectually or ideologically, now you can make a case for it.
Right.
Because when you try to push an agenda and say white supremacy exists, underlying it is power. You know, and then when you look at it from the point of view of discourse theory, like Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, is that every kind of communication in society underlying it is power. So when you see certain concepts or terminologies being used in society, underlying it is power. So when people are projecting the concept or the ideology of white supremacy, underlying it is power. So if I begin to believe that white supremacy exists, subconsciously I'm saying non-white inferiority also exists alongside it, because nothing exists in a vacuum. You understand?
Yeah.
So, but having this understanding, like confronting this power behind the concept of white supremacy, also is liberating to you. And obviously, this is the liberated self, right? So it's all about like liberating the people. So
that's right.
Understanding that white supremacy is not really a thing; it's just an agenda or an ideology that's being foisted on people. But if you accept that it exists, that means you're inadvertently accepting that non-white inferiority or non-supremacy exists. So that means you're less and they're more. No, we're not. Yeah.
But what do you say, and this is the controversial part that you're talking about, right? So what do you say to, because when we think about it, we're thinking about white supremacy as an ideology, right? That's what we're discussing.
Oh, yeah.
We don't necessarily have to buy into the idea that white people are supreme, even though that's the sort of context, right? But we understand that whiteness itself, right, is a commodity. So it's an asset that white people have, which then creates the sort of separation between races. Because obviously race is a social construct, but whiteness in the social construct of white supremacy, because racism and race is a construct of white supremacy, whiteness is on top as we dominate the world, right? As you just described. And then everyone else in the middle is all types of shades, and then black people are at the bottom, right? So there is a spectrum inside of the ideology of white supremacy, and it does have real world consequences, right? So whether we believe as ourselves, whether we see ourselves as inferior or supreme is irrelevant. What we talk about when we talking about white supremacy, especially in this context, is the sort of structure that we're living and existing inside of that have real world consequences, right? And implications. And so it is an ideology. That's what I'm always talking about, is white supremacy as an ideology and the real adverse impact it has, specifically on black and brown folk, not only in America, but across the world, right? Yeah. So I think you obviously illustrated that earlier when you was talking about it. But I just want to, because I think sometimes the way you describe it, and we've talked about this before, we had this discussion, might be confusing, right? To the average person who might not have an awareness as much as we might around this sort of context. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was clear. And I don't think it should be controversial, right? We know that white people are not supreme. We know that. But the experience doesn't match that. Right, because of the structures that are in place to oppress us.
Yeah,
you feel me?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So what is holding these structures together? Yeah, it's power. Right. Yeah, and what is power? Power is the ability to make people do what you want, right? So and whites of this society, even non-white society, if you go to Africa and all that, there's a value system that is patterned after white dominance. Yeah, white dominance, for want of a better word. Right. So there's a system.
You don't like the word supremacy.
Yeah, it pervades everything. So this value systems has been structured and is reinforced by some power systems. That's just it. And when we talk about power systems, that's where we begin to talk about access. So access are denied some more than others.
That's right.
So, and then when you deny access, you make that very thing more valuable because it becomes scarce. Scarcity promotes value, right? So when you live in a predominantly white society and then you deny certain access and you see some people who attend to those things that you want, then there's a tendency to begin to think that they're better than you or to put in more effort than you. But if you understand the workings of that society, the power structures and how access is denied you in certain respects, then you begin to understand and see, okay, this is all a game.
But you know what's so interesting? You know what I was thinking about when you was talking about that just now? I was thinking about in South Africa, how, you know, there was apartheid, right, which is really white supremacy, and how the Africans that were there, the original people that were there, the native and indigenous people, they lost all of their land and a whole bunch of rights, right? And they had to sort of deal with being subhuman in essence.
Yeah, exactly.
And then now when you see what happened in South Africa, how it's been reversed. Right? That's interesting to me because when I think about like South Africa, I think also of Haiti, right? And how Haiti was the first like freed like slave nation in the Americas, even though they're dealing with the consequences of that because, you know, they challenged white supremacy and they won, they freed themselves. But now they're dealing with the consequences, right? Years and years and years later. But when I think of South Africa, I feel like it's a different sort of a different victory in some ways because you literally flip the power structure. Whereas like you took white supremacy and put it all the way at the bottom, and now like there's this other thing that's above white supremacy in that world. And so I just feel like
but I mean, I understand what you're trying to say, but I mean, it is apparent. Apparently, it seems like there's been a power shift, right? But really and truly, is there a power shift? Because, you see, when we talk about white dominance or white supremacy or the white value system and how far-reaching it is, and it's very subtle and insidious.
Yeah.
You see, when you look at the institutions in South Africa, they are fashioned after white value systems, the democracy, the economy. So when we talk about power shift, really and truly is about really replacing the leadership from white people to black people because the structures on which South African society was founded on from apartheid is still pretty much existent and thriving. So there's not really been a total overthrow of that system and instituting a indigenous political, economic, social, and cultural system. There's not. It's just been a mix of the white value system and a little bit of.
So we sort of, it's like we're adopting the white value system and saying that it's liberation when it's not because it's not our value system.
It is not true liberation because the value system still pertains towards white culture and white preference. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with white stuff, but it is the injustices that come with it.
That's right.
Yeah, the denying of the humanity of the other because you want to be like, you want to be on top all the time, and then you deny other people that essence of their humanity. So you subject them to inhuman treatment and all this stuff, or you see them less than human. You know,
that's such a great point because I think about like how we always talking about in America how representation matters, right? And then we see people get into like high positions, but they're still in a white supremacist structure, right? So even though they might be black or brown in certain positions, they're still sort of supporting the white supremacist ideology, right? Which is to keep the status quo intact. And so it's almost like it makes us think that we've arrived when in fact those same people are doing the same harms to our communities and to people across the world, right? That white people have done before them, right? As heads or as representations.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, let's go back to the issue of South Africa, which you brought, and then we'll move on. So this is the thing, right? So if there was true transformation in South African society from apartheid to indigenous leadership, right? One of the first things the South Africans should have done was to change the language from English to an indigenous language, because language is powerful.
Yes.
And it is in language that you find structures of power hidden. And then when we begin to talk about the mental health thing, you will see if they switch the language to their indigenous Zulu or whatever it is to speak over there, then you can tell that the expressions of the people would be from their language, because now the people, they're immersed in their own culture, linguistic culture, but when they have to communicate, they have to communicate in English, and English does not really give them a true expression of who they are. You understand?
Yes.
So, and that's just going more into the politics of it. But
no,
what
but
I'm just trying to say is that
though.
white dominance, or the ideology of white supremacy, is subtle, is far-reaching, and is insidious to non-white people if you're not alert and awake to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you bring some beautiful points up, and I think it's worth further exploring that conversation, because we don't often think about what you just brought up, right? Even though in South Africa things seem that it looks like, at least on the surface, that things have changed, the value systems are still white dominant, right? So it's still white supremacist. Yeah. And so I think I don't think we get to have those conversations often. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it has me at least think more critically about what it looks like on the surface when things seems like they're shifting, but in reality underneath they're not.
It's still the same, yeah. I guess maybe that's the sociologist in me.
Yeah, that's what it is. I used to want to be a sociologist. I used to want to be a sociologist because I loved how I was always curious and sort of curious. That's the only word I could come up with understanding how society works and communities work and how they function. I was always, so I have like a little mini sociologist in me, but like a little social worker, but it's still that sociologist in me. Now let's move forward, because I know that we could talk on this topic forever, and we just had the intro. So obviously you just described, white dominance as sort of your sort of take on white supremacy. So if you can just give me 3 examples when you think about the mental health field, just 3 brief examples of how that shows up.
Okay, 3. I got a lot. First and foremost, it has to do with the diagnosis, right? The diagnostic code, like the go-to, which is the DSM. So the DSM does not incorporate understandings of mental health needs or pathology of non-white people. I don't think any non-white person was part of the working group that put together this DSM. So, no, I mean, I didn't do the research, but as far as I know,
no, I don't think so either.
But as far as I know, even if there were black people, they must have been looking at it from a Eurocentric or white value system. In terms
That's
of
right. That's right.
Because at the end of the day, even we talking in this forum today, we were schooling from a white dominant perspective.
That's
like
right.
The theories in which we're using, applying in our trade, in our job, is still based on Western education.
That's right.
Based on white value systems, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's really understanding that and understanding your own culture with your own people, and finding a mix of what works for them, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so the diagnostic codes, the codes they use in diagnosing mental health disorders for non-white people sometimes can be quite oppressive.
Right.
And I'll give you an example. Like most African cultures, most non-white cultures are kind of holistic, and they're more intuitive. Like, so you could find somebody talking to himself, hearing voices or responding to those voices, because he believes in that spiritual connection, right?
That's right. Yep.
If you're outside of that culture and you don't understand, you think, man, this guy is hearing voices and he's acting on them, so that's kind of schizophrenia.
Right.
But really, you understand? And through the time, because I started my training in England, and England is where you find the power of pharmacotherapy in mental health treatment. So, like, psychiatrists are very powerful in England. So they will just diagnose you with some kind of schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder and prescribe you those medications, which have more adverse effects and have little to do with bringing you back to wellness.
That's right.
Conditions worse, because they do not understand the individual in his totality. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one aspect. The other aspect has to do with the mental health system itself, which is dominated more by white people than non-white people, and you'll find out when it comes to decision making and the leadership in the mental health system, like those positions are more occupied by white people than non-white people. And if you're not in the room where decisions are made, obviously you know that your interests will not be carried along.
That's right.
That's an issue. So what my experience has been that people of my kind tend to be out in the field, doing the field work like case management and case carrying and all that, while the odds,
say it.
Well, why people are more in leadership, policy making, crafting the budgets, sourcing for the funding and all this kind of stuff, while we are really interfacing with the community that actually needs the services. And now you come to a point where policy and practice don't really merge; they contradict each other. Because if you are out there in the boardroom and you think of some beautiful idea, you don't know how practicable it is, and then you tell people like me to go out there and do this, and then it's not working.
That's right.
They are far removed from reality.
That's right.
They can't really understand what you're communicating. That hey, this policy needs to be changed to accommodate the realities on ground. So praxis does not really meet practice.
That's right.
Yeah. But I mean, that could change if a lot of people who are in the field, like the food soldiers, the case managers, the case carrying, and all this kind of stuff, begin to transition into policy making, into decision making, into funding, designing budgets, and all that. So that could really change, because you can bring the field experience into the boardroom and see how everything can mix.
What's crazy? Like, because when you said when you talked about white leadership, I thought about my last position, and I created a seminar for Black and Brown clients or students because I was working at Rutgers, and I created this wonderful seminar, right? I still have the seminar. That's what my private practice is named after. Is the Liberated Self Therapeutic Services is named after the Liberated Self Seminar, and there was such a resistance for me for leadership to give me the green light. Meanwhile, I've been planning this for literally years, right? I practice here, I practice there, like little sections of other programming, and I combined it all to make it a beast. And just the way I was systemically stopped from trying to be able to move forward with the program really spoke to me about how the larger mental health field works, right? Because when we have ideas and we have solutions and we want to bring it forward into the community, there's always ways to stop us from doing our work because it's not in alignment with how things are usually done. And so I really learned a lot from that experience. And I'm just saying this because ultimately that's what prompted me to start my private practice, is because I was already tired of feeling like white people were getting in the way of my progress and my work with my people. That's what I'm hired for, right? Don't get in the way of the work. I get really upset about that because this is my purpose. Don't play with me. And so anyway, I was listening to what you were saying about leadership, and I was like, it's like everywhere, right? And then we don't have the autonomy to do the work that we know can make a difference for our community, right? And so I hear that a lot in what you're saying, and how the way things are structured sort of becomes a hindrance to our work.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that, there are people of our kind who are in leadership positions, but they don't ruffle feathers, if you ask what
that's why they're in leadership positions.
Exactly. So for somebody like yourself or myself who have been in the field for so long, and then we know what the need of the community is, right? And then if we attend to leadership positions, obviously we're going to do things differently, right? But if you go into a room and you don't make people uncomfortable, then you want to really question what you believe, as far as I'm concerned.
It's true. That's real talk.
But having said that as well, you know that you need the other parties to also make gains or gain ground in things that you're trying to do. So it's also about really being savvy, like tempering your revolutionary format and communicating in such a way that people are open to want to partner with you and do things for your community, because it will be foolhardy to be just all 100% revolutionary in that extreme and not coming to terms with the reality on ground. Sometimes you just got to learn how to play the politics and win some gains for your community and all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I think, yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, considering that we both have our own private practice,
Yeah.
we had to play the game in order to get to this position, to be able to have our own private practice. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like we didn't sort of have to chuck and jive a little bit so that we can get to this point. But I think after a while, though, at least for somebody like me, I mean, I'm not a young, spring chicken, right? I'm in my 40s, and so, being in my 40s is like, I'm not 23 years old no more. I'm not gonna do what I would do at 23 at the age of 40 something, right? And so there's a lot of, I think, for people who are more seasoned and older and they've been in the field for a minute, I imagine that we just don't got time for that. Like, it just, we're not about that life no more. At least I'm not.
But the thing is, you might sound like you're selling out, but really and truly, you're not selling out. Because sometimes, if you have the phrase as an African phrase, I think there was a book, but I read a book like that when I was younger. It says you stoop to conquer, right? So sometimes you have to hide.
Conquer.
You stoop to conquer. So sometimes you have to hide your power to make the gains that you want, so you can go about your business.
That's a great.
It's not really about being all bashful and in your face. And obviously, your rights. But sometimes it's not really about rights. It's all about appealing to people's heart, and that has to do with how you communicate.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So sometimes you stoop to conquer, and if that's what it takes, then you stoop to conquer. Then that's what
that's a great saying. I love that. I think that's powerful. Now, when you think about, so you gave us examples. Now, can you just expand on one example and sort of illustrate a specific type of experience or something you've seen in the mental health field that sort of highlights how you see white dominance or white supremacy show up in the mental health field? And can you let us know what the impact was, either on yourself, on your work, or on the clients?
Oh, okay. I have one I'll never forget. So that just started in the verge of my career when I started my early days as a social worker. So I think it was on an internship, one of the internships where I was studying. So I was given a caseload of about 5 clients, patients. That was back in England. So, and being the kind of person that I am, I always interface with the clients. I think there were young boys who were at risk, who were interacting with the juvenile justice system at the time. So I'll meet with them and get involved in activities with them. So I got to know these young people like we were friends, and I was kind of they told me things that they would never tell a professional, because I already got immersed in their world, and that's what you learn from sociology, immersion, right? So when I'm going to this meeting of multi-professionals, psychiatrists were there, psychologists, social workers, and all the works, and they were talking about this particular young man. And the psychiatrist from my organization, because I was the foot soldier, I was the case manager. So the psychiatrists were making recommendations that, this young man has significant mental health issues, and he doesn't think he will make it if he's not prescribed some strong psychotics and all that. And he went on and was justifying how he's violent, he's scary, and all. Man, I was like, I was like, are you talking about this young man that I meet with on a weekly basis that I know so well? So after he said, is there any other person in the room who wants to say something? I don't know where I found the courage. I spoke up. I didn't even know that I was contradicting what he was saying. All I was saying was because I was trying to describe that young man from my experience of him.
That's right.
And at the bottom of his issue was anger. He was angry at his mother for being in a relationship with another man, and he was angry at his father for not being there and being disappointed over and over and again. Right. So that anger made him very defiant. He became oppositional. Right. And he got into a lot of trouble. And I said, at the core of this young man is anger. I don't think there's anything pathological in terms of his mental health makeup with a
Right.
little bit of mentorship and some interventions on anger management, just making him begin to see more insight into his behavior and why he's acting that way, some kind of CBT. I
Uh-huh.
think he'll be on the man,
Uh-huh.
you know? So after that meeting, everybody was like, yeah, yeah. And the board kind of bought into my own recommendations that we should continue the one-on-one with him and then see if we can get into therapy for CBT and some kind of stuff. But
Uh-huh.
I didn't know the psychiatrist was miffed, man. He turned red. So when we went back to the organization, I didn't even know it was like on the last day after my internship that my supervisor called me and said, hey, this is what has been going on. That this psychiatrist filed a complaint against you that you're unprofessional and that they don't know he doesn't know what your qualification is. And then in that meeting, you contradicted him and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, wow. Man, for me, it was a eye-opening experience, but then again, it was scary because if I was this kind of person who wasn't conscientious at his job, I would have been half-hearted and just done things haphazardly, and then obviously would have shown up. But I loved what I was doing.
Right.
So I was dotting my I's and crossing my T's.
Right.
And my supervisor said that they did investigations and they found out that I was on the right. And so that's why they did not escalate it further. I'm like, so why didn't you even tell me from early on that, hey, this guy's filing a complaint against me, but you went on the ground and did all the investigations. I was under investigation. I didn't even know.
That's crazy. Only because you had a different opinion?
Yeah, just because I had a different opinion. And the expert opinion stemmed from my experience and interacting with a young man. It wasn't even hearsay. He had confided in me and told me things of why he did the things that he did. He was doing it to call attention to himself.
Okay.
Because he felt like his mother rejected him, his father rejected him. So if those significant adults in his life didn't want him, who else would want him? So he might as well just be a menace to society, you know? So and he was loving it because that was when people started paying attention to him.
Right.
You know? So, but there was nothing psychiatric or pathological about him. It was just behavioral issues. And now you want to prescribe some antipsychotic, you know?
Do you think
it made it even worse?
But do you think if you was a white man with that opinion, with a different opinion, that you'd be put under investigation for that?
No, I don't think I would have been. I don't think I would have been because he would have seen me as an equal.
Right.
You know? But I mean, that has been my experience anyway, and that was back in England, even here in the United States. Like when I was working in Child Protective Services, it was the same thing. I was the case manager for foster child and having case conferences with foster parents and the biological parents and other professionals in the room. I have to facilitate those meetings.
Right.
And so there was this little young black boy who was placed with a white foster parent. So every time we go into the meeting, you could tell it was a power thing with this white male, this white foster father. Like he just did not agree with anything I say, you know? And I knew like in his thinking, because he filed a report to the director of the agency, eventually that I'm a very horrible social worker and all this kind of stuff. And but the director called me and we had a meeting in the office. I said, no. I said, this is the issue. For me, it's all about identity for this young man. And this young man had mentioned to me that he wished he was white. This is a 6-year-old boy.
Wow.
He wished he was white. That if he were white, he would have had all the good things in life and good things would have happened to him. And as a social worker, that made me very concerned because look, you're a young black male in a white-dominated society. You have to be grounded in your identity because if you do not, later down in life, you're gonna find it very difficult to adapt to this society because you're confused about your identity. So for me, that was very problematic because the foster parent was trying to prevent the biological parent from having their own visitation rights. You know, I'm like, no. I said it's a right by law for the biological parents to have visits. As a matter of fact, we're gonna extend these visits from daily visits to weekend visits so the child can leave the foster home on the weekend, spend the weekend with his biological parents.
You really pissed him off. You must have pissed him off.
I sure did. So it's always been that, like, if you know what you're doing, you're passionate about what you do, you could be a threat to other people, make them uncomfortable. So you just got to be aware of that and know how you move, you know?
So what do you think? So with those two experiences, right? Like they were very similar. I feel like you, like somehow your position as a professional was always sort of put into question whenever you sort of advocated for your clients, right? And so what do you think the impact was either on yourself or even in your work or on the clients? Whichever one you would like to go with. What do you think the impact was from those types of
I mean,
experiences?
for me, the impact has been positive because any kind of naivety that I had about my my role as a therapist or social worker to my clients and trying to change the world for them can
Mm-hmm.
be impacted on by the reality of the society in which they exist, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it has been very empowering. So it has made me understand the power structures and know how to navigate it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes not being very bashful about what you want to do, but going about it in a diplomatic way so people
Mm-hmm.
can see. So from those two experiences, what I've done is every time issues come up, I look at the major stakeholders
Mm-hmm.
and I try to communicate with them on a one-to-one before we converge together in a larger meeting. So
Uh-huh.
that way they know my position and I get their buy-in. So when I present any recommendations, it's just a general consensus. You know, so for me, it's been very positively impactful because now I understand I'm not naive. I'm not this superhero who thinks I'm just going to go here and change the world, you know?
Right.
And I understand the nuances of the power play and I'm learning how to navigate through it.
So you like almost became like a politician in order to do your work.
Well, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But at the end of the day, it's not like I have some particular interest to myself. I mean, the interest for me is that I feel fulfilled. I feel like
Right.
I'm doing my life's calling. It is
That's right.
not material. It is intrinsic. You know,
Yes.
it's not
Yes.
like I'm gaining anything from that. The fact that I'm seeing my clients moving on and taking charge and control of their lives and going on to do great things, for me, that's the most rewarding and fulfilling things.
Yes.
I'm not gonna come lie to you to vote for me to be your social worker so I can take you to heaven. No.
But it sounds very like what politicians do. They gotta think about all the stakeholders and then sort of maneuver through the spaces to get, you know, for the betterment or for the benefit of the client. Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that way, right? But that's the world we live in.
Right. Right. No, I get it. I get it. I just wanted to like highlight that sort of impact. So how you had to sort of switch up how you do work. And I think that's important because we usually don't think about when you're a mental health professional or you're a therapist in the mental health field surrounded by this white dominant culture, right? We're not used to sort of being sensitive to the extra work that we have to do as, you know, black and brown mental health professionals or therapists. And it takes a toll because we're doing extra layers of work that if we were white, we probably would not have to deal with. You feel what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So I
yeah,
just wanted to highlight that because I know other people probably experience similar things that you're experiencing and have to sort of, you know, shape how they do their work to sort of not, you know, ruffle feathers as much, even though you're still advocating on behalf of the client.
yeah. But even in terms of career advancement in the field as well, being a non-white person, like it's going to take you a lot longer to rise to the ranks than if you were white. Because my experience has been like going into an organization like say the government, right? You find out that non-white people tend to stay longer at certain levels and hardly ever rise vertically. You can be in the same position, like performing different roles, and your salary might be growing like as much as a director.
Uh-huh.
But in terms of leadership, you do not develop those leadership qualities because you are performing duties that are that you have to answer to other people.
Right,
So
right, right.
like the white people, like white people who have that privilege, they can rise vertically faster. So for us, the reward, if salary is your reward, you can be content stay in one position for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And then you're just rising on the steps, you know?
Right,
But
right.
if you want to learn how to control things and direct things and move things, you want to rise vertically too.
To
Up the
grow,
ladder
yeah.
to learn leadership skills and all that, so you can come back to your community and lead. Because that's the thing, is leadership. So if you're not exposed to this high level functionalities in the bureaucracy and government systems and organizations and all that, how can you come to your community and mobilize and organize and lead?
That's so
Except
true.
Yeah.
That's so true. And you know, so funny when I think about like all the white folk, my white counterpart colleagues, when I've seen people just rise to the top, but in a matter of just years, while other people are like still doing the same exact job for way more years, and they don't even got skill set. They're not even like dope at what they do. They're just like, they just have this, right? Like the commodity, and that moves them forward in ways that we can't move forward. And we're busting our asses. You know what I'm saying? So let me ask you. So can you think about a time where you were? I know you've advocated. It sounds like obviously with just even in sort of case management meetings. But can you think about a time when you've challenged white supremacy or addressed it and like head on, and what the impact was, or what the feedback was like, or if you had any backlash?
I mean, I wouldn't really say I've really like challenged it. I've made my position known, like to management, upper management, and all that. But I mean, and I had various experiences. I'm going to give you an example from my experience in England and my experience here in America. But I think it's kind of similar. Like in England, like the discrimination is kind of subtle. And they are very politically savvy. They will assure you, oh, don't worry, Mr. Morris. Oh, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Now we're gonna look into it and we'll let you know. And you follow up, and nothing's done about. Oh, you know, it's just one excuse or the other.
Yeah.
Here in the States, it's kind of the same, but they kind of hear you out and they kind of make some effort to want to make changes, but sometimes the structures and the way the organization is set does not even allow for those changes to be effected.
That's interesting.
Meanwhile, back in England, is like they just don't want to listen. They just don't want to change. And I mean, let me give you an example of the way, because I still have family who live in England. My sister, she has her son, 11-year-old boy, who's going to a private school in England, and they have a hair policy. Can you imagine? A hair policy, and that hair policy is one and the same for every student in the school, whether you're black or white.
What kind of hair policy? Because you know, what
about in terms of the length of the hair and the size and everything?
Okay.
You know? But when you look at the policy itself, it's more geared towards white hair or people of white ethnicity, the kind of hairstyle, because black people, our hair grow differently. Right, and the school teacher has been giving my sister a lot of pain about how her son's hair is not conforming to the school policy and all that kind of stuff. So I had to write a letter to let them know. Yeah, I write a letter to let them know that your policy should reflect the ethnicity of your students.
That's right.
Yeah, you can't just put a one size fits all policy when it comes to something like that, where there are variations based on your ethnicity.
That's right.
So how do you know that a young black boy's hair should be this way, because a white boy's hair is totally different from that of a black boy, you know? So there was a whole lot of issues, and we went back and forth with it. I said, hey, we demand a meeting. But anyway, that's a different story entirely.
Wow.
But that's just the insensitivity. I won't say insensitivity, how blindsided it is, like the structure, the power structures of predominant white societies are to the needs or differences or variations of other ethnicity.
But we're not even considered. Our humanity is not even considered in all of it, right?
It might not be deliberate. It's just that you're blindsided to it. But when somebody brings it to your attention, it's something that you want to sit down and like, hey, okay.
Wait, you think it's not deliberate?
Well, I mean, I want to believe that it's not.
Come on now. Come on, Mr. Sociologist.
You know.
Wait a minute. Hold up, right? Come on now. Like, this shit is by design. Let's keep it real.
I'm just trying to be fair. But, you know.
Like, but you are being fair. But you don't think it's deliberate, though? Really?
No, it might be. So, for instance, it might be like, okay, this is a very old school, right? So, probably when they effected that policy, there were no non-white students in that school. And they've never really bothered to look back into the policy to revise it to accommodate for the non-white students who were coming into the school. So it's just
Okay.
like kid off. So I'm just trying to be rational and give them the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean?
That's funny though.
Yeah. So those little things.
I think it's funny because I think about like how the world we live in, when we're thinking about how sort of white dominant culture shows up, aka white supremacy, all of it is intentional, right? Like none of it is by accident. Like, and it's all like literally designed. We think about like the ideology is a set of norms and values and customs that sort of bring whiteness to the forefront of everything, right? And so the rest of us are we just don't exist. We're not a thought. Like what do you mean we should consider, you know, a black boy's hair? Like we're not a thought. Like why would we ever consider that? But all of it is by design. So I just want to push back on that real quick. But I think it's very deliberate. Matter of fact, I know that it's deliberate.
Yeah.
I don't think I know it's deliberate. So I just wanted to say that. But anyway, so here we go. I got the last question for you because it's already 7:58, and you know all of our guests that are here, our stadium of people. I don't like to keep them past 8 o'clock, but
okay, yeah.
Oh no! Look, somebody made a comment about interesting to hear that they police black hair in England just like here. Yep, that's what they do. This is white supremacy. So I want you to just, Mr. Morris, I want you to share a solution you think might make a difference in the mental health field when it comes to white supremacy or the white dominant culture. What's one magical solution you might sort of have in your mind somewhere simmering?
Man, I wish I was a magician. I would have found a solution myself.
Somebody, by the way, somebody keeps saying hi, Dad. I don't know if that's like for you. I know I'm not
That's
Dad.
my daughter.
Okay.
You know, when I logged onto your website, right? When I logged onto your page, I saw her name. I'm like, oh, my daughter follows the Liberated Mind. I said, that's a positive thing. Let me just say hi, Zaria.
Hey, big up to you, Zaria.
Hi, Zaria.
I just wanted to acknowledge Zaria because she said hi, Dad, twice, I think. And I was like, I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying, but I just, you know, we're coming to the end anyway, but I just wanted to shout her out.
Yeah. Oh, man. When I saw that she was following you, I'm like, this is interesting. I said, my daughter is woke.
Or maybe I think she probably started, she started following me today or something, I think.
Oh, probably. I don't know. I mean, that's a good thing. It shows that she's interested in what the father is interested in.
That's right.
It's in the blood.
And yeah, if you follow the Liberated Self, you might be kind of aware of what's happening in the world. I mean, that's the intention, right? Is to sort of push forward that narrative. Now,
yeah, and she's just 12 years old too, so she's
nice.
Getting early. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. See, these are the conversations we need to be having with young people, right?
That's
because
right.
we must prepare them. We must prepare them for what they're going to face in real life. And you know what's interesting? When I was working with college students, nobody was having these conversations with them, and I, as their therapist, was right. And it was like we were not preparing. Even when they would come on campus, right, and they would ask me to do orientations and talk to the students of color, I will let them know you coming into a white dominant institution, right? Mm-hmm. This you're gonna see a whole bunch of white folk, and you might not think that your voice matters. And I let them know that's not about you, right? But I was the only one that was able to keep it real with them, saying this is what it is. So don't, because what happens is they start dealing with the imposter syndrome. They start thinking maybe there's something wrong with them. The professor doesn't call on them, or they're afraid to raise their hand because they think that they're surrounded by white folk, so they're gonna feel uncomfortable, right? And so we don't tell young people that this is the reality of the world that we live in, even if it sucks to say it, right? But it's how do we prepare them unless we're willing to have those honest conversations with them so that they can be fortified moving forward as adults. Because I didn't know shit about white supremacy when I was a kid. All I knew was that I felt like there was something off. You know what I'm saying? There was something off, and I couldn't name it. Nobody told me. There was nobody around me to let me know what I was dealing with. And so it's really important for young people to have conversations like this, because then they're fortified to go into the future and they already know what to expect. So now they're not tripping when they go into the work field, right, or into higher education, and they're feeling funny about themselves. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. I agree with you. And what you just said, I think that's more the solution. Like, if you're asking how we can change, for me, it's this, right? It's all about identity work.
Right.
I think that's what my therapy practice and even the nonprofit that I've started is all about. It's all about identity work.
Yes.
If you know who you are, there's no limit to how far you can go.
That's right.
That's the conversation that's not being had with a lot of young immigrant minority population. Like,
that's
who
right.
are you? Who are you in the context of the society in which you live in?
That's right.
You know, because everything is being projected at you, but you're excluded from it. And you're not going to know that until you get to that point where you begin to compete in wider society.
That's right.
Because all the while you've been living at home, you're cocoon, you're protected. And once you now reach that level where you have to begin to compete, you'll find out that white classmate of yours is going to advance like 10 times before you do.
Damn.
And we that identity, and like you said, working with young white people, young black people, and telling them the things that nobody has ever told them, is the awakening that they need. And this is not to say that white people are evil or bad or wrong. No. It's just knowing yourself in relation to them. And understanding how the society is structured in such a way that you have to give in your utmost best to be able to keep your head above water.
That's right.
It's reflected in the educational system, in every phase of their life that they don't understand it, because the parents step in the gap to make things happen for them and push them along. But it comes to a point where you have to let them go on their own, and they'll be like, whoa, I didn't even know I was a black man. My friends are always white, But anyway, that's a story for another day.
Yo, that was so powerful because, when you talk about knowing who you are, right, it's almost like the awareness of who you are, it automatically sort of has you sort of connect to your intrinsic value, right? And I feel like
exactly.
Yeah, and that's so powerful. That's a powerful answer. I love that.
And if you know who you are, even us as therapists too, we got to know who we are.
Absolutely.
Even though our skill sets are fashioned after a white value system, right? You know the community in which you represent, where you come from. Now it's finding a way to blend what you know and how these people express themselves in their day-to-day realities and make it work. Because you can't just pick a square peg to fit in a round hole. No.
Right.
So we as therapists need to become aware of who we are as well.
That's right.
And then we stand in an intersection of two different worlds and two different societies. And we've been able to go into this world to fetch some certain skill sets and be savvy in that world and where we're coming from. So there has to be a merging of these two environments. So when you go into your interventions, you know how to go about it. So you're just not picking CBT from the DSL, that intervention model, and you're dropping it in the white community in the center of the hood. Like, they were like, what are you talking about?
Word, no, yeah.
And they'll be like, you feel like you're better than us. You come here speaking some good English. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I hear that though. Okay. So yes, beautiful, great points. I just want to thank you, Mr. Morris, for being here. And somebody said good night, Tifa W.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all the ways that you've contributed, even to the Freedom Fighters of the Minds, and how you bring your voice into our meetings. And then, the emails you sent me sort of encouraging me to keep moving forward with it. So I really appreciate you for that. And whoever's on this, thank you for showing up and joining this conversation. And to the listeners later on, that's when they mostly listen, is later on. That's what I do too. I usually listen later on because I can just listen whenever I feel like it. Thank you for listening. And if you're interested in the Freedom Fighters of the Minds initiative, you can email me at antonio@theliberatedself.org. Daniel Morris, his address. What's your Facebook? What are we on? This is not Facebook. Instagram. Your Instagram. Give them the Instagram thing. I gotta attach. It's gonna be attached to the video.
So it's May Ganga. May Ganga sounds. Ganga actually in household word means drama. So May Ganga is the drama. So my mission is to sound the drum and let people know, hey, it's time to wake up. So that's Meganga. But my therapy practice is Resilient Reliant Care. And there's an Instagram page for that as well. There's a website on there. So if you know
Send it to me
anybody in
so I
the
can,
DGM,
can you send that other Instagram to me so I can link it to the,
okay, sure, yeah, I will.
send that to me too. That's, you know what's so funny? Man, you keep going with this. You just want me to keep talking. But when you talk about the drum, right? Like I was just talking to somebody and we're doing a podcast and we was talking about hip hop music and I linked it back to the drum, right? And how the drum is part of the healing process, for especially indigenous and African people, right? Because that's how we communicate and that's how we heal. And I love that that was the name of your Instagram page. That's all I want to say.
So I'm just a drummer. I'm sounding the beats.
Yes.
You gotta wake up.
That's life. It's right here. The heartbeat is a drum.
That's right.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. I hope you come to tomorrow's meeting. It's at 7 p.m. I hope you'll be there. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great night. And I'll speak to you very soon. I'm going to save this and I'm going to repost this so you'll see it again. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, brother. Peace out.
Yeah.